Chapter 35. Of course, Mr. Blue sounded disappointed. It would be children. I thought they looked short. Sully grinned at the two frozen kids. One, a young boy of about 9, the other, a lovely young lady of 11. What's wrong with that, old man? I love kids myself. I have 2 sons, a daughter, and 4 grandchildren. Good for you, said the Time Lord in the azure suit. Well, I suppose we're bound to run into some younglings at some point. You don't have a family traveller? Mr. Blue shook his head. Not me. I was engaged once. He trailed off, forgetting or remembering something. Sully decided not to press the issue. He asked, You don't discuss yourself too often, do you? The alien time traveler shook his head. Actually, I rather feel I've had a bit too much of myself here lately. Hoping to change the subject to something he could comprehend, Sully asked, So, what are the kids doing with the guns then? Mr. Blue scanned the devices. They are vacuum cleaners. Vacuum cleaners? As I said. Why do future vacuum cleaners look like guns? Mr. Blue picked one up absently. Well, they really don't. The device just happens to have a trigger thing. Kinda looks like the Dustbuster. You remember those? How about you unfreeze the children now, Mr. Alien? Quite. The Time Lord enveloped the children with a neon blue beam from his time watch. They fell to the floor gently, on top of each other. The boy and girl both stood, shaken, staring at the old man and the stranger in the blue suit. What? How? The girl began to ask. The Time Lord in the cobalt suit held up his hands and snapped his fingers. All kids love a good trick. He instantly made a 50-piece credit appear behind both of their ears. And misdirection. The boy took his and smiled. The girl was slightly reluctant, then asked, How'd you do that? Freezing you in time and palming a plastic card, because both are relatively easy. Mr. Blue appeared as if he was going to spend some time explaining some things to these children. Or, if I'd rather. Sully decided he'd much prefer to figure out what was going on and, hopefully, get home. He pointed a finger upward. Could you youngsters help us understand what's happening here? Mr. Blue straightened. Oh, yes, of course, excellent. He typed on his wrist device. First, may I inquire as to your identities? I'm Dawn, the little girl explained, curtsied. The Time Lord bowed. Pete. The little boy extended his hand. Sully shook it. There was this huge... And then there was this puking. And big storm? No, it was a big explosion. Kids. The Time Lord quieted the children. One at a time, please. Dawn, you first. All right, Dawn began, catching her breath. I'm here with my younger brother and my rents. Rents? Sully asked. Just. Mr. Blue shook his head. Go on, Dawn, please. We'd been here for about 2 nights when everybody got sick. It started with bad stomach pains at first, and then everybody was puking everywhere. Really? Does it smell odd in here? That's the thing. Pete was squirming in place. His little legs couldn't stay still. It was metal powder. Our folks were throwing up silver stuff. I think it looked like silver dirt. Dawn finished her little brother's thought. Mr. Blue nodded. How long ago was this? The little girl shrugged. Last night sometime. This place was crazy. People were running around and we got shoved around. We don't know where our rents are. Pete started to tear up. Now, son. Sully placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. I promise we'll get you home. And to your parents. Safe as houses. He looked at the Time Lord. Mr. Blue straightened his azure tie, knelt down to their level. He looked them in the eyes and spoke. I have a very special spaceship. She can travel in time. She? Dawn perked up. The Time Lord smiled. Yes, Dawn, it's a she. Her name is Perfect. And you two are going to meet her. Pete's eyes were huge. We're finally going on a spaceship! Dawn rolled her eyes. He's always wanted to go on a spaceship. The giant space elevator just wasn't good enough for him. Oh no. Pete shoved his sister. She pinched him on the nipple. Are you too? Sully snapped into attention, disparaging an oncoming feud. How'd you lot end up in the medical bay? Dad's a doctor. He said to wait for him here, Dawn explained, then quieted. But he never come back, love. Mr. Blue frowned. Dawn sadly shook her head. No. Pete pretended he wasn't tearing up again. For their part, the children were really trying to put on a brave face, but the Time Lord knew they were incredibly frightened, as did Sully. And did you two ever become ill? Mr. Blue asked. No. Dawn was excited to answer. Dad said we had the pathogenic, Pathogenic, love? Sully asked. Dawn nodded. He was talking fast before he gave us the gas mask. We have a pathogenic mutiny. Pathogenic immunity? Your father was a very smart doctor. The Time Lord raised an eyebrow. Makes me wonder how he knew, and why he still gave you the gas mask. Sully interrupted his train of thought. What about the ship, sir? To get to perfect, Mr. Blue started. Practice, Sully interrupted. This made the children laugh. Sully started to light a cigarette, then put it away. We have to get to the surface, Mr. Blue finished. Let's take the elevator, Pete urged, clearly excited by the prospect. The Time Lord fumbled for words. It is, out of order. Sully completed the Time Lord's sentence once again. Thank you, Mr. Blue said, staring at Sully. Sully put up his hands. What I would like for you children to do is take me to your rent's room. We don't have any stuff there. They took it all when the quarantine. The Time Lord nodded. I understand, Pete. The communication systems for the building are locked by the quarantine. Do you know what that means? We can't talk to anybody, Dawn offered. Quite. Mr. Blue held up a finger. And nobody can talk to us. And that sucks, right? The children nodded emphatically. So, let's find the private communication system in your room. You know, the one your parents have to pay for. See if we can get a hold of anybody on the surface. Have them send the elevator back up. That sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? Pete shrugged and Dawn nodded. Sully extended his hand for Pete, who refused. I'm old enough to walk by myself. Mr. Blue extended his hand for Dawn, who took it and explained, You are cute. The Time Lord sighed and extracted his hand, deciding instead to type on his temporal watch as they strolled down the hallway.